it's a bit of a sickness in a sense that like when you see an opportunity, you want to do it so bad that you'll put other things aside for it. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. Yeah, it truly is.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Founder Hour. We're here today with Eytan Elbaz, who is the co-founder of multiple projects. I won't go through all of them just so we don't start and finish off the podcast with me talking. But he is the co-founder of Render Media, Social Native, Scopely, and he's an investor in other projects as well. And we'll kind of talk about all the things that he's done. But Eytan, we're glad to have you, and we're excited to hear your story with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
So I'm going to kick it off with something a little interesting, kind of get you thinking, to kind of see where your head's at and get the juices flowing. If you had done everything you wanted in life, and I tell you, Eytan, you're a farmer. You have your own ranch. You're going to be a farmer. What's the one plant that you would grow?
The one plant that just came to mind is the one I probably shouldn't say on this show. I mean, I'm thinking that there's like a economic value to this particular plant, but I'm just going to go with my favorite fruit, which is the lychee. I go crazy for lychees.
Why is that?
They're just so tasty and the texture is awesome. It's like the best fruit. It's the one fruit I just go nuts over. I walk into Trader Joe's and I get like 4 of those boxes at once, the little cartons, and probably get through like 1.5 cartons before I leave the parking lot.
Wow.
Lychees.
I love it.
I feel like I got my lychee game on. I
haven't
really had too many of them. Cool. So we like to kind of always start off with the backstory. It's really interesting to hear about just kind of the upbringing of founders and what really got them to where they are today. So tell us a little bit about your childhood. Did you grow up in LA? What was that like?
We moved around a couple times. So I started the first 7 years in Cincinnati, Ohio. I grew up the next 7 years in San Antonio, Texas, and kind of really consider that where I'm from, San Antonio, Texas. So I picked up the San Antonio Spurs, which is a fun team to root for, kind of winningest major league, professional team in history, I think, American history. San Antonio is a fairly it's a small big town, so it's a slow lifestyle. You've got small neighborhoods, and your neighbors, and you play ball with your neighbors. And I think what's pretty interesting about growing up in these different places is I really got to feel a few different cultures. So San Antonio, Texas, fairly conservative right-wing area. West Palm Beach, Florida, which was kind of a mix. You'd have some liberal folks and some conservative folks, but still fairly conservative. Los Angeles was kind of eye-opening for me because I got to UCLA and I'd never seen such a mix of folks before, and that was just awesome, and I knew this was my home.
So you came to LA for college?
Yeah, came here for UCLA.
What did you study in school?
Computer science and engineering.
Why did you decide to do that?
I think I was good at computers. I was the captain of the computer science team, like 11th and 12th grade, but sort of unwillingly. I think I didn't necessarily want to be the captain of the computer science team because I didn't think it was all that cool. And so when I got to college, I was focused on other things, and I think the family kind of came back around and said, this may be something you should explore. I think there's going to be something good at the end of this. And so it was really a couple of people around me, a couple of family members who just encouraged me to engage with this thing that I was good at.
But did you have any idea that this thing that you were good at would turn into a career down the line? I
did not really envision the future for what it would be. I remember thinking back then with my older brother, at one point we were talking about, it would be awesome to start a business together one day. But then I reached this conclusion. I was like, but all the good businesses were already started. I guess that's the kind of thing you think when you're 18 years old or 19 years old and you haven't seen enough cycles in the world. Maybe now it's different. Maybe now businesses happen so quickly, but I don't know. I feel like in the early 90s, the world was still pretty slow, and the idea of starting a company and coming out with a new product just seemed Overwhelming, hard. Where do you even start?
So how did you start your first company?
Well, despite all that, all we'd ever do was talk about business ideas, like nonstop. We like, what if we could do this? We could do this. And this actually started back when, Gil and I, my older brother and I were, selling baseball cards as kids, and we were always sort of, I guess, kind of hustling out there to try and figure out if there was something to buy and sell. But by the time we got to college, both of us were into computers, and so we just kept thinking of software ideas. So it was generally like either a software idea or an internet idea. Internet, as I was finishing, internet was just starting. I remember the day then Gil was like, you need to check out this thing called Mosaic, which was the predecessor to Mozilla, predecessor to Firefox, not to Netscape. And so, I remember he pointed me towards the internet, and we started trying to think of what are ideas that could spin off of the internet.
So you go through college and you graduate with this degree in computer science and engineering. What's the next step for you?
So I was a programmer for 6 months, and I really did not like being a programmer. And so during those 6 months, I figured out how can I go and do something else with my computer science engineering degree that I now had. And I found a role at a company called AMD, Advanced Micro Devices.
Which their stock is probably still killing it right now, right?
Because they're the only one of two companies who knows how to mine crypto.
Right.
But not nearly as good as NVIDIA.
And at one point, Warren Buffett was, I think, he held a lot of their shares. If I'm not mistaken, I think so.
That may be true. I haven't followed them for a long time. But they were looking for salespeople that had either a computer science engineer or electrical engineering degree. So I was like, okay, this is something I could do unique, with this degree. And so I went and worked as a computer technical sales engineer for 3 years at AMD.
And what did that experience lead to?
I got to sort of just get to feel different parts of a business. So as a salesperson, you get to start meeting, the different people in a business, the president or the CEO or the engineer or the marketing person. You start to get to know, like, who do I have to convince in this organization to buy this semiconductor chip? And the people you're talking to are also trying to think about, like, what's the business I'm trying to build? And oftentimes they're asking me, like, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think I should build this? And, my first year, I'm thinking, I'm just selling a chip. I'm just a 22-year-old kid who's got a flash processor, and I think you said you need one. And, by the end of year 3, it was like they're coming to you and they're asking you so often, and they're so kind of confused about what they want to build, that you start putting yourself in their shoes and realizing, not everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody's a little bit trying to read the future, do a little fortune telling of what product's going to be important next. And so, it's interesting. At that moment in time, internet, like 1999, all the internet stocks went nutso. And it was that moment I was like, I need to quit what I'm doing and go do internet, anything. And Gil and I came up with an idea, and we went and did this idea. Now, it's interesting, of course, the market crashed a year or two later, but I was already in it. I look right now what's happening with crypto, and I think that identical same thing's happening where you get probably a bunch of 25, 26-year-old kids who are like, I'm going to drop everything and go do crypto. And 94% of them are going to probably toil away for 2 years and end up like worse off than they are right now.
So are you predicting a crash?
I mean, it already happened in the last 48 hours, right?
Yeah.
We lost 50% in 48 hours. I think that's a crash. It took the NASDAQ something like 10 or 15 years to regain. So, what'll Bitcoin peak down at? I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to go ahead and guess this, but enough people have quit their jobs to say they're going to do a crypto thing. And a small percentage of them are going to succeed and be wildly successful. And the vast majority of them are going to, unfortunately, toil away. But, maybe they'll have some good experiences along the way, and hopefully they don't drive themselves too crazy.
So you study engineering in college, and your first job out of school is actually not as a developer, really. It's a sales,
My second job was
Our second job was sales. How long were you at that company, and when did you sort of transition to starting your own thing?
Yeah, I was at that company for about 3 years, and it was interesting. One of the folks I was talking to I was trying to sell microchips to is telling me about, I'm going to start this new internet PC business. And I can tell, once again, this is a guy who wasn't totally sure about what he wanted to do or wanted to build, but it seemed like he had some resource and wanted to dig in. And at that point I said, hey, I do have this side project thing. I don't want to talk to you about it on work hours because it's not appropriate. So what I'd like to do is come after work with my brother, set an appointment. Let's talk to you about this other thing I'm thinking about working on. We're working on. And by this point, Gil and I had already pitched probably 10 or 15 investors who'd sort of, mostly all passed. But this particular investor was really into it, and 12 hours later gave us a term sheet.
Wow.
So that was pretty exciting. And, it wasn't even but, about a week later after this meeting, we had a signed term sheet, and I think I gave notice days later. So within a week or two of that meeting, I gave notice.
So was this Oingo?
That was Oingo, yeah.
And which then on became Applied Semantics. Tell us about how those early days were and how that kind of transition happened.
Yeah, Oingo was totally the garage. We all moved into a house, and we all lived in the house. When I watched the movie The Social Network, it felt exactly like my life in so many ways, and the way we lived. We had 20-some people working in the house. We had 8 people living in the house, but it wasn't like an 8-bedroom. It was a 5-bedroom. There were just people sleeping on floors. And
this was with the money that you had raised from that investor?
No, interestingly, we were able to move into this house. LA wasn't that expensive in 1999. We rented a pretty fun little house in the hills up Crescent Heights, north of Sunset for, it was like $4,800, $4,600. And so 5 roommates, we each paid whatever it was, $800-900. The company paid $800 for rent.
Wow.
And we got up to 20 people on that.
Awesome. So, and this you said was around 1999.
Yeah, that was in 99.
What was Oingo doing?
Oingo tried to do a bunch of different things. The first thing we tried to build was an open source web directory, kind of like an open source Yahoo, but a company pretty quickly called Nuhu, also known as DMOZ, open directory project. They started doing it, and we thought, oh, we can't do that. And we tried something else we called meaning-based search. So it was like a search engine, but after you typed in a word, like the word Genesis, you'd have to clarify which meaning of the word Genesis you meant. Like Genesis the beginning, Genesis the band, Genesis the game controller. And we thought that was pretty fun and cool, and we got a lot of write-ups about it. But think about it. If every time you went into Google, you had to type a search in, and then you had to qualify what search you meant, that would drive you crazy. So it wasn't a really good product.
So were you making money though?
No, absolutely not. We weren't making money. Search engines weren't something you could make money on for a long time. But we did come up with a different product called Domain Sense. And that was when the domain name you were looking for wasn't available, you come up with a conceptually related alternative.
I need that.
Yeah. A lot of people needed it. And so we started licensing that out for a few $1,000s a month. And we strung together a handful of few $1,000 a month deals, till we got to maybe $20,000-25,000 a month, which wasn't amazing, but it was enough that we actually raised a $5.5 million venture round.
So how did Oingo become Applied Semantics? Was this a different project you guys were working on? Tell us about that.
So it's interesting. We launched AdSense in October of 2000, called Oingo AdSense. And we showed AdSense to a lot of folks, did Yahoo and LookSmart and Alta Vista and the big search engines of the day. And everyone thought it was neat, but nobody really wanted to pay for it. And the general feedback we were getting is, we're a bunch of kids, internet people give everything away for free, and Oingo is a silly little kid internet name. So we realized we needed to just feel bigger and sound bigger and act bigger. And so we hired a couple senior level folks. We used to call them it used to be called gray hairs back then. Maybe they're still called gray hairs.
Probably, yeah.
Which has a whole other set of issues with it. And we thought we'd change this name into something that give ourselves a much more meaningful, significant feeling icon logo.
So it was more about the brand at that point.
Yeah, what's a company that can charge money?
Right.
Oingo can't charge money,
Right.
but Applied Semantics can.
Right. So, Eytan, at what point does Applied Semantics get interest from Google?
So it's funny. We got a phone call from Google 6 days after we launched. One phone call from Google.
From when you launched Applied Semantics?
When we launched Oingo back in the year 99.
Oh, wow.
Sergey left a message for Gil. Gil and Sergey had known each other back in when Sergey was a graduate student at Stanford. They kind of ran in the same circles. And Sergey was generally calling it, say congratulations, and we probably listened to that voicemail like 20 times. We were already really enamored with Google well before the world was enamored with Google, because we were trying to build a search engine and theirs was just way better than ours. We essentially didn't really talk to them again for another 3 years. After we'd gone and built a business, they were going and building a business, and then our paths crossed again when we had figured out AdSense after messing around with it for 2 years. Turns out that Google really wanted to do this thing. They called it contextual targeting. And they had been working on it, and we'd been working on it concurrently, and we ran into a customer. And we won that customer, which was USA Today. And that sort of started the discussions.
So when did the buyout happen?
Yeah, so we probably started talking to them in late 2002.
So things are moving pretty quickly from the timeline, at least, that you're saying. It probably doesn't feel like it at that point, but I mean, 3 years is pretty quick.
It felt, I've left out a lot of the story, but in
sure,
between 99 and 2000, we went through 2 sets of layoffs, 2 different CEOs, blew through all of our venture investment, a couple inbound lawsuits that were nearly killed the company, and just like all kinds of infighting.
It was probably the worst time in tech history, right? Like those couple of years during the crash.
Yeah, everything was just generally awful, and it was just very hard to make progress. And we also went through 9/11 as a country, and that was just an awful time for everybody in a lot of different ways. But 2002, late 2002 rolls around. We're starting to figure ourselves out. We start meeting with Google again. We get called up to a meeting with Google in February of 2003, a couple of months after we start talking.
15-year anniversary, huh?
Yeah, just
Almost, yeah.
It's coming up soon. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And we expect the business development people that we'd been working with to be in the room, but instead it was Larry and Sergey and David Drummond and Jeff Donovan, basically the guys who ran the company. Everyone except for Eric Schmidt, who we got to meet later that night.
So Google acquires you
Yeah.
for just over $100 million. So just right there overnight, not discounting all the hard work you did, but pretty much overnight you become a millionaire. How did that change your life? I mean, did it change it at all?
It's crazy the way that venture economics actually work. I think that people assumed. The truth is, I actually did not become a millionaire that day for a number of reasons. Number one, we'd already diluted the company a good bit, right? The venture investors owned 30-40% of the company. We had 45 people working there. We had probably 70 or 80 people who had been through the company. We had 80 shareholders on the employee front. We also had a deal with our venture firm where they essentially got to take most of the cash in the deal because they had this huge preference rights. So we essentially didn't get much of the cash from the deal, and we got left with more of the stock. Now, at the time, everyone thought we were getting the worst end of the deal. That's turned out to be better for us since Google stock's done well.
Very well.
Yeah, very well. But really, the bigger hits kind of came later. It took until the IPO until it was meaningful.
So you got acquired, and then you went and worked at Google. You were head of the domain channel there.
Yeah.
Why did you go work there? Was that like part of the deal? Or?
Yeah, that's part of the deal. They want to retain you, and they put good packages in front of us. And I thought it'd be great to go and work for Google. I mean, Google was the coolest company in the entire world as far as we were concerned, and it was still early. Google's only 1,000 people. The world still didn't totally know Google, but we felt strongly about them. And after 4 years of startup life, the idea of being a little, encompassed in a bigger corporation, felt a little nice. Maybe we get a couple more perks than we used to have.
But was it weird for you to go from owning what became $100 million worth company to working for another person or another, for a corporation in this case?
No, it felt good. It felt really nice. I think 4 years of startup life is sort of like 8 years. And, in terms of just like emotions, lack of sleep, hard work, ups and downs. So I sort of kind of I knew I could get a lot of great work done at the company and move forward. But it was also just time for a different experience for me.
Yeah, and great work done you did. You were there for 4 years about, and grew it from 13 million to 600 million, and even bigger, I'm sure. And then you left in 2007. Was that right?
Yeah.
Why did you leave? What did you leave to do?
I had always had. You asked earlier on. You were talking about what did I want to do in college. When I got to college, I actually kind of wanted to be a film major, and I was sort of kind of talked out of it, which was great. I really do appreciate that.
Who talked you out of it?
Just my dad, my brother, and a good family friend who I was working for at the time. So the three of them were just like, do not do this.
Yeah.
So I thought after I did all this, I want to go and make short films for a year. Films, yeah. So I was one of the first YouTube creators. Made a bunch of short films. A couple I'm really proud of that still live in the Museum of Tolerance today. And
was this when YouTube was part of Google, or was it like just an up-and-coming company?
This is after YouTube got acquired, yeah. So I have an early channel there. It still exists called Shake State.
So you now are just kind of pursuing your passions, taking a break from, I wouldn't say taking a break from working completely, but taking a break from, building a company and then working in another, billion-dollar company. At what point do you decide, okay, I think I'm ready to, do something again, build something again myself?
Well, I guess I've done that 3 times now. So I guess it hits me every 3-4 years.
Okay. So how long has it been since the last one?
Well, we started Social Native in the year 2015.
We're about that time.
No,
okay.
We're not due yet. I'm not due yet. I've got 3 operating companies out there that I care deeply about and need to see through. So I don't foresee myself doing another one right now. We got hands full.
So let's talk a little bit about Scopely, because I know that was a big project of yours. Tell us about how that came about and how you got it to where it is today.
Yeah, I will tell you that my co-founder Walter Driver is a beast of an entrepreneur in every way that you can measure an entrepreneur.
How did you two meet?
We met through just like tech networking events. There's a dinner that Mike Jones and Peter Pham of Science put together, and me and Walter met at that dinner. We ended up hanging outside the restaurant that night and talking for like an hour, and reconnected a couple times, reconnected at Coachella, and we just like to hang out. We started becoming friends, and I started recognizing that, I thought he was a quality entrepreneur. I don't think I really fully appreciated the magnitude of the man that Walter Driver is until years into us building Scopely. But he's a guy who's got a tremendous vision, just no need for sleep and food for days at a time, and just a desire to win. And so...
he did go to Coachella, and so did you, so that's pretty much what it is.
Right, we've got that, and so, we worked hard to build that business, but Walter, I think selecting a co-founder is probably about the most important decision you make, and I was fortunate to select, the greatest entrepreneur in LA right now, next to Elon Musk.
So, Eytan, you've now built Scopely. You're growing that. What causes this itch inside you to keep doing other things, to keep on building another company? It's not easy, like you said earlier. It's not. It's in fact probably double the work. If you said 4 years is like 8 years, but you kept doing it. It wasn't stopping you. That hard work wasn't a turnoff. In fact, it seems more like it. You didn't want to take the easy path. You wanted to challenge yourself.
I'm clearly at least partially crazy / addicted. I mean, I think if you have some sort of entrepreneur gene, it's a little hard not to want to do stuff when you see an opportunity. You just want to do it. But I joke, it's a bit of a sickness in a sense that like when you see an opportunity, you want to do it so bad that you'll put other things aside for it. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. Yeah, it truly is.
I want to talk about this distinction between just general entrepreneurship. Like some people, might be working a full-time job and then come across a really good opportunity and they take it and they kind of just ride it out. And some ideas take longer than others, perhaps for an exit or whatever it may be. But in your case, you're more like a serial entrepreneur. I mean, you've had like really quick stints and just grew companies multiple and to a really large state. How do you see that distinction? Like, how does who I guess is fit to be like a serial entrepreneur versus like just an entrepreneur, if that makes sense?
Who is fit to be an entrepreneur? I mean, I think anybody who sort of has the itch should give this thing a try. But, I think it shows up early in life. I feel like the conversations I've had with the other entrepreneurs, that they always had something they were trying to get done early on in life, like sell baseball cards or sell mixtapes or go to a comic book convention, or they figure out something that like one kid can do. Usually it was selling something around their neighborhood, and it's a common story that I just kind of have heard many times over. Yeah.
Eytan, what I also find very interesting is that you built these companies and obviously have had tremendous success, but you've also helped other companies. You're an investor, and I think the article that I came across that I saw, it said that you were quote unquote most important person in LA tech. I guess this is where you can kind of brag, and we would encourage that. But what makes you the most important person in LA tech? Is it the connections that you have? Is it the experience that you have? Is it all of that? But how did you get to that point?
Those were very kind words. I would say that I've certainly my experience. I've been here in LA tech for 19 years now, and that's a long tenure here in LA tech. So you certainly build a network. And I'm truly committed to making my investors money. I think that's an important point about an entrepreneur. Like, is this someone who wants to return capital? And I care deeply about the idea of looking an investor in the eye and saying, I'm doing everything I can, and I will do everything I can, to return capital. And so I think reputation's important.
So tell us a little bit about the projects that you have going on now. You're obviously working on a couple different ones, Render Media being one of them, Social Native the other. And I'm not sure how much you're involved in your other projects, but tell us about what's going on.
Yeah, so I'm spending most of my time right now running Render Media. We're digital publishing. So for folks who aren't familiar with us, we probably look a little bit like a BuzzFeed. We've got a news channel called America Now. We've got also a news property called Opposing Views. We have a food channel called Cooking Panda, and Cooking Panda's got really strong engagement. Again, similarity to something like a BuzzFeed Tasty. But we make a lot of branded food videos. I've been fairly excited about the idea of, on Facebook, you can just get such a mouthpiece. You can get so many video views for putting stuff together. So it's fun to do the news, fun to, participate in the current events.
I don't want to get too political, but I think I have to here with, you brought up news, and we all know that, of the political climate that, the news, that word has been in. It's like the most famous thing right now in the world is news.
Yeah.
Without getting into, I guess, personal politics, how does the current administration and the rhetoric affect a company like yours that is really in the media news business?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. The scent of Trump helped news views. I mean, he was kind of a cash cow for views. There was always something to talk about. And all of news media took advantage of that, right? They put Trump on the air all the time. And, I think it had a meaningful impact on the election.
So, from what I see from all the work that you've done, it seems as though you're very passionate about content in general. I think if I had to really go and break it down, content would be that broad term that you're interested in. You said that you enjoy film, that you wanted to be a filmmaker. You started so many different companies focused around news, just media. You're a content kind of guy. Why do you think that is, or where does that stem from?
That's a good question. My father was always a storyteller. I never thought about that question until just this moment. My father was a storyteller. He was the principal of the school. He was always telling stories to the kids. And, I think we communicate all of our life lessons through these stories. I think stories are really powerful. And I think it's so amazing. We've been able to tell some stories on Opposing Views that have reached north of 50 million people last year.
Wow.
I think it's wow from an engagement perspective. Now, we don't get paid for it. There's no monetization there. But, we told 53 million people that if you replace detention with meditation in schools, the kids will behave better and will be less, less of problem children. And it's true, schools started doing it and kids got suspended less and they feel better about themselves. And that's it's hard for me to imagine that dozens of school districts or administrations didn't see this and try it.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the concept of meditation because we all know when you're meditating, they say, focus on one thing and just stick to that. How does that translate over to entrepreneurship? Because in your case, as a serial entrepreneur, you have all these different projects going on. How do you stay focused?
The one thing in life I keep saying I want to make more time for is meditation. It is hard. I mean, email, phone, computer, laptop, iPad, times 3 companies. It's insane. It'll take you over, and there's definitely many days where it's taken me over, and I have to learn to fight back against technology and notifications.
So where do you draw the line? How do you manage all your projects right now? Is it a schedule that you have and you stick to it? I mean, I'm guessing you can't possibly stick to a schedule.
I don't have a schedule that I stick to, and it's probably something I should have in life.
Eytan, to kind of wrap things up here, I think that our listeners and both Patrick and I, we agree that there's been a lot of success on your business ventures, but what does Eytan consider a success? I mean, is it the financial part of it? Is it making a difference by putting out that news and content that is clearly changing lives? I mean, at the end of the day, what's making you happy? What is it that you're saying? I'm successful?
Well, my family. When I love working on business and I love working on these projects, but fulfillment comes from spending time with my family and just playing some guitar and telling those closest to me that I care about them and have them do the same for me.
Awesome. Well, Eytan, thank you so much for your time. We wish you the best of luck with all your business ventures, all the personal ventures, and we hope to see you again and see the success that you have both in the personal and professional world.
Thanks so much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.